SLC Punk says a lot more about a new generation of filmmaking than it does about the last generation of the American punk scene. Any subject can make a good film in the hands of competent filmmakers, but this one, even if the subject is interesting, is more concerned with its own vanity, the self-confessional of the Facebook generation. The fact is, the characters in this movie are not that interesting, the plot is recycled from dozens of earlier 1980s punk movies, and there is a gaping hole where any sense of rebellion should be. Okay, so the movie finishes with an attempt at suggesting a new brand of rebellion, an anarchy from within the act of conformity. I get it. But I don't think the filmmakers get it. The story follows Steve-O, played by Matthew Lillard, as a successful college grad attempting to rebel against everything by living some prototypical punk lifestyle which he's borrowed from everyone else. This is admitted by Steve-O in monologues addressed to the camera. He talks a lot. The writing attempts to paint him as keenly aware of the inherent contradictions of his situation, but the monologues are just not that smart. In one vignette after another, we are shown the cliches of every rebellious movement in history boiled down to fast food grade philosophy. Order versus chaos, growing up, responsibility, fathers and sons, amusing drug anecdotes. It goes on and on, tired and endless as the cover band at your local after-hours pub. To sum up, here's what I see as the problem. There's a difference between making a movie that only comments on an idea and making a movie from that idea. SLC Punk thinks it embodies the philosophy of punk, but it doesn't. It only wants you to think it does, and there's the difference. And maybe that's a redeeming factor. The vanity of this film is closely aligned with sensibilities exhibited in too many movies made in our day and age. Whether they are telling emo stories about themselves, that is soft young white people with first world problems, or whether they're remaking their favorite genre films of the past in a misplaced bit at homage, they are only staring in a mirror, longingly and lovingly. So dudes, what did you think of SLC Punk?
That's it, Billy.
That's it.
Billy.
Wow.
Billy's making up for my long-windedness.
I had a preternatural sense of Joe's 45-minute review.
My apologies for that drawn-out long-winded thing.
Yeah, that might even beat the Jeff Clockwork Orange intro. Billy is one of the shortest we've ever had. I don't blame you for not coming up with much to say about this, especially after watching. I watched this one last. I mean, I watched Suburbia, CBGB, then I watched this one. I watched this one today, actually, and I was completely unimpressed with it. It was really boring. I think I said to my roommate as he was walking by, he's like, "Yeah, so what's going on?" I'm like, this might be one of the worst movies we've ever had to review on this show. It's really unimpressive. I was completely disconnected from it. I think Matthew Lillard just doesn't look right in the part at all. He brought nothing to the table here. I think he's trying, and kudos. You're trying to get into the character. It just doesn't work for me. The only time I was ever interested in anything that was going on in this movie was when there was a scene with Christopher McDonald, who's just always entertaining.
Who's Christopher McDonald?
He played his father.
Okay, gotcha. He was always wasn't he always the bad guy in Saturday Night Live movies?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But he's done bigger things. Like he was he's great in Quiz Show as the host of the of 21, and he's done some other serious work. But
Requiem for a Dream.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so he pops in, occasionally does some real serious work. But yeah, he's more known for being, the bad guy in Norm Macdonald's Dirty Work movie, or
He's in Adam Sandler too. He's a bad guy in Happy Gilmore.
Right. He's like a bad golfer,
Yeah.
But he is an interesting guy, and he's a lot of fun to watch on screen. And I really enjoyed the scenes that he was in. I think it was like two scenes, where him and his wife were talking to Lillard Steve-O, which was entertaining. And when he pulls up in the Porsche and takes him out for lunch, I kind of dug his presence, but this movie just it really didn't do much for me. I'm curious to hear what Joe has to say first, and then we'll talk to Adam because he picked the movie. So, what was your experience like screening this, Joe?
Again, this is another movie that I totally get that point, and I get your points there, Billy, about not being. I don't know. I just watched the movie. I didn't have a strong reaction either way, to be honest with you. I was a little bit detached from it, so I wasn't exactly in it. I think if I saw it when I was younger, I'd probably dig it, which is actually my question. Would be a question actually. So, do you think you guys brought this up? I listened to your Nightcrawler review actually. Do you think that sometimes we get too jaded to watch for films like maybe they're other people are enjoying films, but we've seen it. Do you ever feel like we've seen things a little bit too much, and we kind of see it through a bit of a shattered glass perspective?
I'm gonna jump in on that with an emphatic no, because it's not the cliches never bother me. A cliche, a repetition of an old story, none of that ever bothers me. It's the filmmaking itself that bothers me. So it's like, it's not really what a movie's about. I will literally watch a movie about anything, even if it's a repeat of a theme or a story or a plot or anything else. But it's the filmmaking itself, man. It's not, it doesn't, the personality behind, or the personalities behind the film just don't seem to have anything to tell me, like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I know, you know what, listen, the ideas that are being presented here are definitely ideas that I think that seemed fresh to me when I was in my early 20s. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like this stuff about this theorizing about chaos and order and what punk is, and chasing anarchy and then coming to terms with that anarchy is not possible. Like, these are all ideas that I actually found pretty interesting when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And, now I've given considerable thought to these things now. And, the fact of using, the punk costume and the garb and the aesthetic, adhering to sort of a tribe, to, the irony of finding a clique or a tribe to adhere to in order to come to on the other side, to come out and find that, to be truly rebellious is to become an individual. The irony of, picking up a group's identity,
So you're saying the ideal audience.
But just like that, yeah. But those ideas were important to me when I was like in my late teens and early 20s, for sure. So I think that, like, if I saw that, and watching this, that's not far from my head, you know what I mean? Like, thinking like, okay, I've thought about that. I've sort of resolved this within myself. This is a movie about kids in their late teens and early 20s that are grappling with that. So I don't know. I'm just asking the question that, kind of like a Natural Born Killers or whatever. I didn't hear what you guys had to say about that, but like, that was a really fantastic film. Like, those films were really important to me when I was a kid. And now if I saw them for the first time now, I'd probably think lesser of them because, I've read all I'm just a different person, but I don't know. I'm just posing the question. That's all.
I think there's basically what you're saying is the ideal audience for SLC Punk is a 14-year-old who's never heard of punk rock before, which
not
is
punk rock, but who hasn't really given thought to the fact that by wearing the costume of punk is not really punk. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, to come to that realization, like, is a realization that I in fact came to, like, after putting on a few different garbs and costumes, and it was an important one for me when, when I was 16, 17, 18, probably 20, 21, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think whatever that movie is that is your first blush that talks about that, it doesn't really matter how good the filmmaking is. If it affects you with its ideas, then yeah, I mean, it's going to be something that's great. I mean, there's so many movies I go back and look at, from time to time, I go back and look at a movie that really affected me when I was younger, and it's like, oh, that's really not a good movie. It's not very well made and everything, but I don't really care because it was my first introduction to something, whether it was whether it was Werner Herzog or a science fiction movie, so yeah, I think it's fair if that's your experience, but I don't think my job isn't to tell you that this movie is good if you've never heard of punk rock or considered those things. My job is to tell you that as someone who's seen a lot of movies, there are better ones. Suburbia is better than SLC Punk.
Infinitely. And the thing is, Joe, is like well, Billy was,
and I agree
Billy
with
was,
that. But I agree with that. By the way, I do agree with that.
I hear you.
Certainly.
And what Billy said, I think, right off the bat was like, I think it just comes down to like good filmmaking or bad filmmaking. And this is bad filmmaking. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been through these feelings, and I might become numb to the same storyline and seeing like, you know, these things get done over and over again. But I could still get moved by a movie about youth, you know, where you watch kids go through a journey, you know, like you watch Linklatter's Dazed and Confused, you know, I could watch that movie and dig it and feel for it. You know, whether I'm 20 or 50, because it's good filmmaking. This is just not good filmmaking.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I do understand that, but I do. But just playing devil's advocate,
but you do have a point too, because I felt that way with Natural. I think I felt that way with Natural Born Killers, right, Billy?
Yeah, you went back and you looked at it and you went, "This isn't a masterpiece.
Yeah,
this is
not what I thought it was.
I can't get high off of this anymore."
I could not. I was very numb to it. I was really bored by it, and. You, Joe. I mean, I'm sure this is a movie that you and I watched together once or twice. I'm pretty sure it was on in the background.
Yeah, it was an important film to us.
Yeah, and I loved it. I'm like, oh my god, I would watch it like once a week.
Well, just because that even with that one, he was doing some cinematic trickery, if I recall correctly, with mixed media and all that shit. And like even here, though, like. When was this movie made?
98.
In the 98. So like 98, this is sort of like what people were toying with in the late 90s, like this nonlinear storytelling, voiceover, direct camera stuff, this like sort of hyper bit of business. So again, I think that if I did see this in 98, I probably would have been like, wow, yeah, all right. You know what I mean? I would have, and not only that though, but some of the ideas that it posed about, some of the philosophical ideas.
It sucks because it's there. I mean, just like CBGB, I mean, the content is there. It's just poorly executed. It's just poorly executed. Like, yeah, I get what.
Okay, well, so all right, so the point that you brought up, Billy, about the vanity of the filmmakers was really interesting. I mean, the film is really calling attention to itself, right? Obviously, I mean, the main characters, like. Drawing, talking directly to us into the camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what is bugging. Is that like the thing that's bugging?
No, I just think that maybe I read too much into it because it's like having grown up in Southern California, I feel like I have my finger on the pulse of a certain type of character that's a West Coast kind of a mentality. And movies like this, really, I sense that, but it's everywhere. It's not, it's not a geographical thing, but it's that the characters speaking, in the voices of their creators, they want you to think that they're awesome and rebellious and that they're smarter than everyone else. Look, the basic tenet of a movement or anything, when you declare yourself one thing, it necessitates standing in opposition to another. So the easiest way for any person to feel good about themselves is to shit on someone else, right? So you just create an enemies list and you say, the suburban people and the churchgoers and the baby boomers who cut their hair and worked and got a job for Reagan, they're the assholes, right? So the movie is it's trying to point out in the course of its filmmaking, in the course of the film, that there's an emptiness to merely doing that. But the way that it's done, he's just grandstanding all the time and trying to show you how smart he is. And his observations are just not that smart. They're very trite, like there's supposed to be this deep conversation with this other character about order versus chaos. And it just sounds like the shit that I would talk with my brothers about when I was 10 years old, like this isn't a bright conversation for a college graduate to be having, and all of his observations are just so trite, they're not exciting. So if you were going to make a movie that had that for 10-year-olds, I could understand, but this movie is aimed at 20-year-olds and 25-year-olds, so I'm like, I don't get it. It just seems to be more about him trying to impress you,
I got you. It's like you're sensing like the filmmaker's trying to be clever and just like, look how I guess I get that.
And he's showing, he's condescending to you, showing, this is the punk rock lifestyle. Like, we think differently, and
well, but to not to rush to his defense though, but the character in the film is overcompensating the whole time.
Sure.
Like that's part of the point, is that he's like, he's obviously, that's his main flaw, is that he is overcompensating. He's trying too hard to be a punk, which was sort of the point at the end of the film, where he finds a girl or whatever, and she's like, wouldn't it just be more punk instead of buying all that blue dye or whatever to just work on yourself and try to become an individual? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the part of the movie that I really want to like. But I feel like even at that stage, he doesn't take the scalpel to his own psyche enough. There's not, he doesn't even analyze that with any depth, or any irony or anything. I mean, there it is. It's there a little bit, and I want to like it, where he says, "My dad was right. I am just like him." He comes to realize that everything he's been laying down the whole time is that he's just full of shit, and he's trying to convince you that he's so punk. Exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Is that he's so punk, and he's so anti-authority, and he's so anarchist. You know what I mean? He's even more punk than these other punks, and he's and it just shows you the frivolity of that.
It's just a fashion one-upmanship. Yeah.
Yeah, but I did say that, like, one of my notes here is that the film is trying to overcompensate for itself, just as the character in the film is trying to overcompensate.
Yeah.
So I do understand. I do.
It's
get
like
it.
he's taking his subject he's recreating exactly the same mistakes that he's criticizing his character of committing.
Right. Yeah, well, I guess it's a confessional film in that sort, in that light.
One of the best things about the Cutting Room Movie podcast is not only, as a listener, but as a co-host, you could get lost in the Joe and Billy conversation.
That was nice.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
It's good. And I got to thank you guys a lot for making this segment a bit more than I thought it was going to be. But I do want to get Adam in, because he did assign the movie, and I want to get his quick feelings about what you guys just talked about and the movie itself. So what's going on there, Mr. Shoulder?
Yes, well, it's funny. You guys are totally right. The movie's not very good. And when I first saw this movie in my 20s, and I liked it, and I don't know that I identified more with the punk mentality at that point, but I thought it was an okay movie. And now looking back at it, I can really see that it's just not a great movie. But it is funny how that part jumped out a lot more to me now, as in my 40s now. From the dad's perspective, it's like, he was there, he was a hippie, he went to Woodstock, and and then he says he defends it by saying that he bought in. Basically,
I didn't sell out.
I bought in.
Yeah, I like that line. That's a good line. I also like how he likes to take credit for stopping the Vietnam War too, which was pretty funny.
Yes, exactly. But in terms, so again, what I was originally going for with these movies, and by the way, I hadn't seen CBGB, and we talked about that in the last episode, and that's also not a great movie, so I didn't pick some winners here. But like I said, I was going for more just that punk ethos and just how it affected people over the decade.
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's an important genre. I mean to me and to a lot of people out there. So
well, by the time that this was set in, right, like there's the punk thing had already spread to the suburbs,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Exactly. It had spread to the suburbs, and it's just something to latch on to. That kid was always going to go to Harvard. He was always going to be a lawyer. And this was just something that was almost like a fad that was passing through, that he didn't really ever. And that's why, I think in the movie he defended it so much, overcompensated, like you guys said. For that element of it, I liked. But in terms of, if I look at it just as movie making, technical filmmaking, it's not very good at all. It really isn't.
Yeah, it's dog shit, Joe.
Yeah, it's weak. That all the VO, all the talking to the camera, all the It is just weak film.
Yeah, man.
making.
It's interesting though that it did have an effect on you though, Adam, when you were younger. I mean, that is
When I first saw it, I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, I'll tell you what, doing the show, I think about bringing stuff to the show. I've done it a couple times where, I mean, but I got bashed for bringing Heaven Help Us to the show really bad. And I grew up on that movie and I brought it here. I was like so proud of it, and it got shit on bad. No. So now I don't even bring like my whole agenda, and it's a better agenda to have when you're assigning movies. It's like, I'm not bringing anything that I personally love to the show. I'm just bringing.
That's hilarious.
And it's funny too because
I'm glad it's devolved into a cage match where you just would never put any, like your children or your pets, you would never put inside that cage.
You don't want to risk too much here.
No.
So I'm like just trying to assign movies that I've never even seen before, and just like, taking a shot at it. You can get away with like, a great one, if your theme, if it has a movie that is great and it's not going to get fucking punched in the face.
It does kind of hurt when you really love a movie, and then
well, there are some people that really on the show that really enjoy. Dave is one of those types. Dave loves bringing movies that he loves. He wants to bring the movies that he loves, and he signs them out, and he sits back and he waits and he listens to see what's going to happen and everything. I don't recommend that. Now, Jeff next week is assigning everybody a filmmaker that he really, really likes, and it's going to be interesting to see everyone's reaction to that. So that'll
Is this the dog movie that they decided not to do or something?
No, I think no. Wendy
and Lucy is a great film,
Lucy.
though. It's a great movie, and so is this other one that he picked too. I really like this filmmaker. I didn't see the other two.
So you're familiar with this filmmaker that we're going to be covering?
Oh yeah, I saw Wendy and Lucy, and the other one that he picked.
Her name is Kelly Reichardt.
Yeah, okay. She started working with that production company, goddamn Oscilloscope, and they put out a lot of really low budget indie films that Max will friggin' hate, but are really pretty interesting. Like they really are.
So we're just basically
Old Joy.
Old Joy Night Moves we're doing next week, and Meek's Cutoff is a Western that I got to.
Yeah, I've seen Old Joy and Wendy and Lucy.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of Westerns, but I'm going to, obviously do my job. So basically next week, Joe, we're going to be Max is just going to be complaining about how he's got to do this, and then he was not on this show.
When he's watching these movies, he's going to be tearing his friggin' ears, his eyes out.
Let me ask you real quick, Joe, before we say goodnight. Do you think that he will not watch one of the movies?
Oh, he's done that before. Yeah. Oh, I'm very busy. I can't come in.
Do you think we're going to be getting that email at some point within the next?
I don't. Man, it is really hard for me to tell it's hard for me to feel what Max is going to like and predict what Max is going to like. He liked Birdman of Alcatraz, and
we had like a 5-minute conversation, guys. That Joe and I did about like Joe did his intro. Joe and I talked about it for 5 minutes, and then Max is like really disappointed. About like what you were like, what did he say, Joe? He was like, you guys didn't even talk about the one thing that's important that's in this film, and that's these little birds.
The bird.
Yes,
he was about to write an epic poem to the metaphor of the birds in that
movie. Adam, I can't get a grasp. I mean, I know obviously he likes Jackass, he likes horror movies and true crime. I mean, I can't.
That's all very true.
I can't figure out. Like, I don't know why I can't figure out if he's gonna like a movie or not. Like at all. Like it's always surprising me if what he likes and not. Do you have any handle on that?
I don't. I think Jackass is a safe bet, of course. I think true crime usually, anything that is Manson related is always a winner. But yeah, I mean it varies. Horror films usually, strange, odd films, anything that maybe Crispin Glover is involved with. I think you'll get a win.
Okay,
but listen, I can't predict it. I don't know either.
That's funny.
Oh man! All right, guys, we're gonna start to say goodnight now, and I'd like to thank Joe, Adam, and Billy for doing the punk rock thing. Man, I had a lot of fun. This is great. It brought back some great memories. I think I'm gonna put on some tunes tonight myself, Joe. And
there you go.
In honor of what
I was watching some punk rock stuff. I watched a whole concert from the Talking Heads from 1980. It was freaking
Stop Making Sense.
No, it was some Japanese concert in black and white.
Because we were watching the other night, like last week. I put one of their concerts on, Joe. It's so funny that we watched one of them too. It was awesome.
Yeah, I really got into the Talking Heads like later, my mid-20s. I really started freaking digging what they were up to, Yeah. And I had no idea. Just listening to the music, I had no idea that they were tied to even to the New York music scene. I was just oblivious.
Yeah, they lived across the street from CB.
Yeah, I had no idea, but just to see that concert was freaking amazing, man.
Like he walked into CBGB and just started playing Psycho Killer.
That's pretty great.
It sounded right off like they just cut the album.
Yeah, crystal clear.
It was so. Oh my god, that's so insane.
Yeah, that was bad.
It doesn't make it. Now that doesn't make any sense.
That was some weak ass shit.
To be honest with you. All right, guys, let's say goodbye. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is brought to you by Christiana Productions and New Media Limited. The show is edited and co-produced by Joseph Schreck and produced by Thomas Detloff and Joe Cristiano. We'd also like to thank our associate producer, Jeremy Garcia of Dartboard Cinema. He's so hard at work, Joe, on Facebook and Twitter for us. This kid is awesome.
We love you, Joe.
I really do. I cannot thank you enough for getting all that stuff done for us, man. It's really awesome. You could like us on Facebook at the Cutting Room Movie Podcast and follow us on Twitter at Cutting Room Podcast at TCRMP1. And you can follow me on Twitter, Thomas Detloff, at TCRM Podcast. You can also check out Joe's film work at ChristianaProductions.com. Check out Adam's new show, his new pilot, Starland PC, at StarlandPC.com. He's got some Adam, you have a new teaser in the mix, right?
There's a teaser preview up on the website at the moment. There'll be a new preview coming up very soon.
There you go. And
Adam, I was looking around. That's about it's about a life coach.
It is.
That's great.
And the website is set up to look like it's the guy's company, and so it's like a blog-oriented kind of thing. Yeah, that's it.
That's so funny, man. Like I was thinking, like a year ago, I had that thought. I was like, oh, the life coach is such a great subject a character for a movie, and it was in the back of my head. And then I saw that you were doing it. I was like, oh, that's a great idea.
I'll tell you, Joe. I could really use a life coach.
You really can.
Everyone could use a life coach. I think.
Telling you right now.
Just get a dog.
That'll do it too.
That's the first thing the life coach would tell you, Tom.
Yeah, well, the last person that took advice from a dog went out and shot people in New York City in 1977.
Well, he was using the dog as the life coach, unfortunately. That was what the problem was.
Oh, man. Check out Max and Adam's Bowler Hat Productions website, and their Mimosa Podcast show is on there. That's at maxcookandthecounselor.com. And check out Max Cook's blog at maxcookuncork.com. Music from the Zillatones. I'm sorry, music from the cut. Fucked up, Billy. Music from the Cutting Room is done by the Zillatones. Check them out at www.zillatones.com or search for the Zillatones at reverbnation.com. We'll be back next week. We're going to do some Kelly Reichardt films for a couple of weeks, starting with her 2014 movie, Night Moves. And Joe is going to be giving the introduction on that one, so that'll be a lot of fun. So we'll be back next week. Until then, we're over and we're out. Ciao.
desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.
A dream. He's
Yeah.
great.
Yes. Exactly.
shit.
Yeah. So he pops in, occasionally does some real serious work, but yeah, he's more known for being, the bad guy in Norm Macdonald's Dirty Work movie, or what's the?
He's in Adam Sandler too. He's a bad guy in Happy Gilmore. I think.
He's like a bad golfer,
Yeah.
But he is an interesting guy, and he's a lot of fun to watch on screen, and I really enjoyed the scenes that he was in. I think it was like two scenes, where him and his wife were talking to Lillard Steve-O, which was entertaining. And when he pulls up in the Porsche and takes him out for lunch, I kind of dug his presence, but this movie just it really didn't do much for me. I'm curious to hear what Joe has to say first, and then we'll talk to Adam because he picked him on this show. It's really unimpressive. I was completely disconnected from it. I think Matthew Lillard just doesn't look right in the part at all. He brought nothing to the table here. I think he's trying, and kudos. You're trying to get into the character. It just doesn't work for me. The only time I was ever interested in anything that was going on in this movie was when there was a scene with Christopher McDonald, who's just always entertaining.
Who's Christopher McDonald?
He played his father.
Okay, gotcha. He was always wasn't he always the bad guy in Saturday Night Live movies?
Yes,
More or less?
absolutely, yeah. But he's done bigger things. Like he was he's great in Quiz Show as the host of the
That's right.
of 21, and he's done some other serious work. But
Requiem for
Paint him as keenly aware of the inherent contradictions of his situation, but the monologues are just not that smart. In one vignette after another, we are shown the cliches of every rebellious movement in history boiled down to fast food grade philosophy. Order versus chaos, growing up, responsibility, fathers and sons, amusing drug anecdotes. It goes on and on, tired and endless as the cover band at your local after-hours pub. To sum up, here's what I see as the problem. There's a difference between making a movie that only comments on an idea and making a movie from that idea. SLC Punk thinks it embodies the philosophy of punk, but it doesn't. It only wants you to think it does, and there's the difference. And maybe that's a redeeming factor. The vanity of this film is closely aligned with sensibilities exhibited in too many movies made in our day and age. Whether they are telling emo stories about themselves, that is, soft young white people with first world problems, or whether they're remaking their favorite genre films of the past in a misplaced bit at homage. SLC Punk says a lot more about a new generation of filmmaking than it does about the last generation of the American punk scene. Any subject can make a good film in the hands of competent filmmakers, but this one, even if the subject is interesting, is more concerned with its own vanity, the self-confessional of the Facebook generation. The fact is, the characters in this movie are not that interesting, the plot is recycled from dozens of earlier 1980s punk movies, and there is a gaping hole where any sense of rebellion should be. Okay, so the movie finishes with an attempt at suggesting a new brand of rebellion, an anarchy from within the act of conformity. I get it, but I don't think the filmmakers get it. The story follows Steve-O, played by Matthew Lillard, as a successful college grad attempting to rebel against everything by living some prototypical punk lifestyle which he's borrowed from everyone else. This is admitted by Steve-O in monologues addressed to the camera. He talks a lot. The writing attempts they are only staring in a mirror, longingly and lovingly. So, dudes, what did you think of SLC Punk?
That's it, Billy.
That's it.
Billy,
Wow.
Billy's making up for my long-windedness.
I had a preternatural sense of Joe's 45-minute review.
My apologies for that drawn-out, long-winded thing.
Yeah, that might even beat the Jeff Clockwork Orange intro. Billy is one of the shortest we've ever had. I don't blame you for not coming up with much to say about this, especially after watching I watched this one last. I mean, I watched Suburbia, CBGB, then I watched this one. I watched this one today, actually, and I was completely unimpressed with it. It was really boring. I think I said to my roommate as he was walking by, he's like, "Yeah, so what's going on?" I'm like, "This might be one of the worst movies we've ever had to review."